die, put me in one of these bad boys. When you die, we're putting you in a black trash bag and dragging you out to the curb. Shut up. The story of this funeral bus was worth the price of admission alone. Welcome to the Something or Other tour. Welcome to the Something or Other tour. We're at the National Museum of Funeral History here in Houston, Texas. It's a museum dedicated to death, the celebration of life, various ways of taking care of dead bodies. Looks very interesting. Can't wait to check it out. There's some really awesome artifacts in here, a lot of history, a lot of things to learn. And as someone who has a morbid curiosity and morbid sense of humor, it's right up my alley. On the other side of the building is like a training center, so I think you can learn embalming and whatnot if you're going for a career in that field. But one half of this whole building, doesn't look like much on the outside, is an amazing museum.
The National Museum of Funeral History celebrates not just mortuary science, but the cultural traditions and respect given to the dead.
This train cart was found abandoned near Galveston, Texas. And it would be used, like so, to transport remains in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So remember when people were still heading out west, it was still the frontier, pioneering. Most of them had families back east, they had roots back east. So a lot of remains got shipped by rail back to the East Coast. And then sometimes even then shipped back to Europe if they were European immigrants or whatever. But obviously before air travel, they had to get there somehow. This coffin, for whatever reason, makes me think of like the old deep sea divers with the big brass helmets, big thick glass. This is the money casket. Pretty well known. It's traveled the country. They would travel around to different trade shows and whatnot because it was actually shown as an example of what you could do with acrylics. Acrylic was still kind of a new technology at the time. So they used this to be like, look, you can put money in caskets. It's about $643 altogether, US currency. This custom-made casket is for a young family. A couple's small child died. They were so depressed that they had planned to kill each other and be buried together with their child in between them. So they had this special casket made. They had changed their minds. They ended up moving away and it was never used. Pretty crazy. Get 3 coffins ready. It's pretty cool. They have this set up so it looks like a workshop. Sort of a recreation of the old Marcellus casket factory up in Syracuse, New York. I have some family history up there. They were in business for a very long time, but in 2003, the factory was closing down. So the National Museum of Funeral History here ordered the very last casket that factory was ever gonna make. And that's it right there. My mistake, 4 coffins. If you get that reference, let me know, and we're good friends. This place is huge. The presidential section has a bunch of uniforms used in the processions, funeral pamphlets and mementos, a Yale tribute wreath for Gerald Ford, ammunition box containing 105mm cannon rounds was fired in the 21-gun salute during the final military honors for President Gerald Ford. Black canvas covered funeral bier. The caskets were put on top of this. It was used in the funerals of Gerald R. Ford, George H.W. Bush, former First Lady, Lady Bird Johnson, Betty Ford, Nancy Reagan, and Barbara Bush. Isn't that crazy that their bodies were resting on top of this? This actual hearse was used for Ronald Reagan and Gerald Ford's funeral processions in California. Good old Honest Abe, huh? It's actually how surprising he looks like an older Jet, you know, the boy himself. I think if any president was as smart as Jet, it would have been Lincoln himself. But I doubt it. I doubt anyone's as smart as Jet. President Lincoln himself is laid to rest right back here. They have a pistol similar to the one used in Lincoln's assassination. Flag remnant from 36-star silk flag that adorned the interior of one of the cars of Lincoln funeral train. Wow. Apparently this is a lock of Abraham Lincoln's hair, and it's tiny, so they give you this. So this is the same exact style casket that Ronald Reagan is buried in, and this is the same exact style that John F. Kennedy is buried in. A few years back, we did do a video at Dealey Plaza where JFK was assassinated. Get a lot of interesting comments on that one. This is the original eternal flame for JFK's monument at Arlington National Cemetery. It's the original one. They replaced it in 1998. I've said it a million times, but I love models and dioramas. So the Lincoln train funeral procession model is amazing. It also shows the route up there that it took. 500,000 mourners choked the streets, roof, windows, and doorsteps of Chicago. They have this section dedicated to the police and fire department, and they actually have a piece of the Ladder 18 New York Fire Department engine here that was destroyed on 9/11. Pretty amazing. I've been to Ground Zero and the park and the fountains they have now. It's beautiful. One of the ways I deal with pain, loss, is definitely humor. I'm one of those people that laughs at inappropriate times. So I fully expected that walking in here, but they kind of hit you right away with the president's 9/11. But again, I'm one of the people that deals with my sadness with humor, so keep that in mind. This is something I've always heard about, never witnessed, especially big down in New Orleans, jazz funerals. So they make it a real celebration of life. Good music, good times, good memories. We'll march from maybe the funeral home to the cemetery and just have a good time. The parade master would have their top hat and parasol. And if you're gonna go, that's a good way to go out. Hearses from all over the world. This one's from Germany. It's just packed. This is the International Hall. And it's cool to see that they all serve the same function, but all the details and design are definitely adjusted for the cultures. Ken Quay, I'm probably butchering that name, created all these fantasy coffins. They're amazing. Look at this, a jet plane. Huh? You want to be buried in a jet plane? This Japanese hearse from the 70s. Pretty ornate, pretty wild. Pretty cool model, King Louis XVIII's funeral procession. The original hearse was lost for a very long time until a curator at the Versailles Carriage Museum looked a little closer at one of the carriages and was like, wait a second, and they actually found a marking commemorating that Louis XVIII was carried in that hearse during his funeral ceremony. So now it's at a museum, and this museum has an awesome model of it. Dia de los Muertos is represented in this area. It's a tradition that I always thought was really cool. I do have a tattoo in this style. It's something that always resonated with me. I feel like it might be just a better way to celebrate and honor those that have passed on. And I, of course, love the art style and the colors. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to honor people that you miss, people that you loved. This Rolls-Royce hearse is huge. Man, 1921 Rock Falls hearse. This one is ornate. All wood carved. Wow. And this is actually where the term basket case came from. In the Civil War, soldiers would have their legs amputated, things like that. They'd be put in one of these wicker coffins, and the staff would refer to them as a basket case. Eventually that term just was used more and more until it became a term of, like, you know, someone a little crazy, some screws loose. These old hearses are so beautiful. Let it be known, when I go, I want it to be in a big old Cadillac hearse, or even a Studebaker. hearse. They have a funeral home ledger from 1859, all sorts of paperwork, funeral bills. James F. Boyle, doctor, undertaker, and embalmer. This hearse here is believed to be the oldest restored hearse in the country. It was built in 1832, and it was used up until 1926. In the winter months, they would even take the wheels off and put sleds so they could still perform funerals in the snow. In the back, there's a 1800s coffin. Has pewter, gold leaf finish made out of oak, I believe. These things are so amazing. This hearse is specifically for children. It's a little smaller. You guys may remember a long time ago, my Angels Camp Museum episode, they had some hearses in their carriage museum. Awesome place, awesome episode, if you haven't seen that. And they were talking about these plumes that they would put on the hearse itself, and the color of the plume would tell you a little bit about the person that they were having a funeral for. If I remember correctly, it was a white plume, meant it was a child. So if you see the white plume, you would know. These are worth the price of admission to me. Life is something else though, right? We're all here, then we're gone. Nothing we can do about it. Doesn't matter how hard you try, how rich you get, how much you exercise, what you eat, what your mindset is, doesn't matter. Death gets us all. As I said, I have a very morbid sense of humor, but this stuff is meaningful to me. I joke away the pain, and tragedy and things like that are not foreign to me. I know it well. It's not something I bring up on the channel, but it's unfortunately something I'm somewhat used to. And I totally respect anyone that doesn't joke about death or anything. I respect that. I'm just the other way. Whatever the most difficult things are in my life, I use humor to get through it. Whether it's tragedy, whether it's embarrassment, shame, anything like that. I like to make fun of myself or the situation. I get it if you're not into that. And I apologize if any of my humor is coming across as insensitive. I promise it's not, deep down. Every single person represented here, every single person that rode in any of these hearses deserves respect and empathy, because it's a fate that will befall all of us, and there's nothing we can do about it. And I definitely appreciate people that can laugh through the tears with me. And I promise when I'm dead and I'm a ghost, if you make a funny joke about me passing away, I won't come haunt you. I may laugh and pat you on the back. I like to see all the contraptions. They buckle you in so you don't go flying out, you know? I feel like you see that a lot in movies and stuff, but this shows that movies are a liar. The history of embalming. The Egyptian section. Steve-O was with me when we did the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum. That was a fun episode. All those artifacts and stuff, pretty cool. Section has tons of interesting information about the embalming process. Come on, a robot with a pharaoh? How do you beat that? Father of American embalming, Dr. Thomas Holmes, who started with ancient Egypt, where they really pioneered it, right? You get to the American continent, and it was still being perfected. You may notice there a Civil War uniform. Dr. Thomas Holmes really started pioneering the American embalming because of the Civil War. So if soldiers died on the battlefield, you could embalm them and bring them home to their families almost intact, so that they could still have a funeral and their own family ceremonies, as opposed to just losing them completely to the war. Pretty cool that they have this set up with how it would look during the Civil War, with this tent set up, starting the embalming process. There's a whole case of different fluids, embalming fluids they would use, arterial fluids, cavity fluids, to fill the body up and keep it preserved. By about the 1920s and 1930s is when you started seeing the funeral home business, the modern business that we know today, starting. before the whole process would actually be done in the home of the family. They would do the embalming, the funeral, the ceremony, everything. And then in the 1920s and 30s, they actually started having funeral homes. Much easier process for the funeral homes to do the embalming and whatnot, not have to set up in somebody's bedroom. About that time is when it really started to become an actual industry, and you could get embalming certifications and all that, and open up a funeral home. You see the drainage right there, so the fluids would drain down at the bottom into like a bucket. Man, that's gross, huh? There's so much gross stuff that come out of you. We're the same person, so even the same stuff coming out of you. Now this is awesome. 1916 Packard funeral bus. So this was meant to sort of replace the traditional funeral procession with a whole bunch of cars. And you could load up the casket and like 20 people, 20 mourners, get into this bus and just go with the casket. Now the most interesting part, this funeral bus was in San Francisco. As you guys know, is my home big city. It's very hilly, lots of hills, very steep climb. So this bus was going up a hill and the bus actually tipped back. Everyone fell over, the casket fell, the pallbearer tumbled over all the people, and the funeral director was so embarrassed that he decommissioned the bus. And then it says someone actually called it home after that for like 40 years. So someone was living in it. Originally it was on a Kelly chassis, an old company that no longer exists. And then when it was restored, they threw it on a Packard chassis, so now it's a Packard. But it was lovingly restored and brought here. It has a top speed of about 12 miles an hour. How cool. I wish I could figure out what cemetery it was heading to. I've talked about this before. I talked about it in the last Duel in San Francisco video. All the cemeteries in San Francisco were exhumed and moved to Colma. How cool. It's got its original all rubber Goodyear tires. This is awesome. This might be my favorite thing here. I love the carriages, but this tied to San Francisco too. Lovingly preserved. I love these setups. Makes you feel like you're in an old Victorian home for a wake. This display is of a typical parlor in the 19th century. During this period, it was customary that when a member of the family died, the undertaker would attend the deceased in the home. This is a real memorial picture from Comfort, Texas. Mr. Daniel Dunbar died February 11th, 1851, aged 43. These shadow boxes are always creepy. They'll have locks of hair and things like that. Little mementos. Sometimes they would take the hair of the deceased and make little memorial jewelry, do little shadow boxes with the hair, sometimes in lockets or a brooch that you could wear to remember the deceased. It was called mourning jewelry or hair work jewelry. Seeing these youth coffins is always really sad and incredibly scary when they have the window. These are cool, these mourning badges, like little ribbons you could wear when you were in mourning, pallbearers could wear. This time period, this style is definitely my favorite when it comes to like ghost stories and scary movies and stuff. 1800s funerals and Victorian style together, it just complements each other so well. This is my favorite room for sure. 4-passenger Brougham, aka the widow's coach. So creepy, right? Not much scarier than seeing a woman in a black mourning dress with a black veil over their face. Newest exhibit. What's awesome about this place is just looking at the website and the history of it. They're constantly adding and changing things and updating things. Really cool place. So of course, before photography, they would commission a painting, and then eventually photography became a thing. This is awesome. They have these original daguerreotypes and tintypes here, and they have the real one, and then they have a lit up version so you can really see it properly. They even have a daguerreotype of Abraham Lincoln in his coffin. Alright, stay still for the picture, dead guy. He kind of looks dead still. Oh well, alright, we got it. A lot of times when old pictures like this are found, there's a debate whether the person in the picture is alive or dead, because sometimes they would take dead people, prop open their eyes, and try to get one last shot before they buried them. So sometimes pictures will be found and people are like, we don't know if they were alive or dead in this image. There's a coffin with a family of 3 in it, sort of like the other coffin we saw earlier. One of the problems with this type of photography was it took a whole bunch of dangerous and toxic chemicals to make it happen. Get ready for my post-mortem photo. Quit moving. I'm not moving, dude. Take the picture. You keep fidgeting. I'm cramping. Hard to say my favorite thing in here. Might be the Packard funeral bus. I say these ones. Yeah, these might win out. That's it for the National Museum of Funeral History here in Houston, Texas. Really great museum. I got me a souvenir shirt, a little urn. Had to get my Subies. And remember, we have a Patreon, a lot of bonus content, bonus episodes there. As little as $1 a month, you can help support the channel. If you're in Houston, you want something interesting, unique, something you normally don't see, check this place out. Like, subscribe, share, do all the cool things the cool kids do, something or other to Vertlife. In 130 years, when Brock Purdy finally passes away, we got a casket for him. Afterburner. What is this, Top Gun? Not earn like this knuckle sandwich that you're earning. Talking to me that way. There's so much in here, I couldn't possibly show it all. So if you're in Houston, you gotta stop on by.